Welcome to International Trade Minute, Quick Fire Trade News, the essential podcast for today's trade professionals, presented to you by REI Law Firm. If you're a seasoned practitioner, this is where you'll find your weekly distilled briefing on the pulse of international commerce and regulation. We bring you the latest legal and trade news, distilled into straightforward, bite-sized updates for busy trade professionals. Sponsored by REI Law Firm, this podcast is crafted by expert trade attorneys to keep you ahead of the curve with concise, actionable insights. Perfect for your morning commute or coffee break. Stay informed without the fluff. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and join our professional community on LinkedIn. In this week's episode, we'll cover HSI's major counterfeit investigation successes, serious allegations about REI's supply chain practices, new CPSC electronic filing requirements, updates to U.S. outbound investment rules, and the latest on AGOA participation status. Let's dive in. First up, Homeland Security Investigations has made significant strides in its fight against counterfeit goods and trade violations, with their new Trade Enforcement Coordination Center generating leads worth over $1.2 billion in commercial entries. This center, launched in fiscal year 2024, has already supported 38 criminal investigations while providing enhanced support to field offices working alongside CBP. The HSI's congressional engagement has yielded promising legislative developments, including proposed bills to expand forfeiture capabilities for seized opioid-related chemicals and establish a dedicated trade crimes unit at the Department of Justice. They've also secured provisions for a specialized seizure fund targeting sanctioned Iranian proxies. Their Intellectual Property Rights Center demonstrated practical impact during the Super Bowl, where operations in Las Vegas resulted in the seizure of approximately 4,600 counterfeit items. The center has also expanded its Operation Apothecary, focusing on disrupting transnational shipping routes used for illicit pharmaceuticals, particularly in Western Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. The Government Supply Chain Investigations Unit, now in its second year, has launched several targeted operations. Operation Gung Ho focuses on preventing counterfeit weapon components from entering the supply chain, while Operation Genuine Valor works to protect veterans by ensuring the authenticity of medical supplies in federal contracts. Operation Rollback leverages e-commerce data to identify problematic third-party vendors, and Operation Chain Reaction specifically targets counterfeit microelectronics that could compromise Department of Defense supply chains. These initiatives represent a comprehensive approach to securing U.S. supply chains and preventing the infiltration of counterfeit goods, with particular emphasis on protecting government procurement channels and critical infrastructure components. Up next, a concerning report from the University of Massachusetts Amherst Labor Center has cast a shadow over REI's supply chain practices, alleging widespread labor violations across multiple countries. The investigation reveals troubling patterns of forced labor, mandatory overtime, below poverty wages, and worker intimidation in supplier factories across Cambodia, China, El Salvador, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. The report highlights that while REI maintains a factory code of conduct dating back to 1993, their remediation efforts have been inadequate. Instead of taking direct action, the retailer appears to rely primarily on other brands to address issues with shared suppliers. The investigation also points to REI's frequent factory changes, a practice that reportedly contributes to worker instability and downward pressure on wages. Though REI's private label products weren't directly linked to forced labor in China's Uyghur region, the report identified 5 major brands sold by REI, including Adidas, Nike, Columbia Sportswear, Patagonia, and VF Corporation, as having high-risk exposure to Uyghur forced labor issues. Specific facilities named in the report include Textiles Apico in El Salvador, PT Holy Karya Sakti in Indonesia, and several facilities across Cambodia, Taiwan, Vietnam, and China. These locations have been associated with various labor violations, from forced labor practices to union suppression. In response, REI has defended its practices, stating they're deeply committed to supply chain accountability and swift action when issues arise. The company emphasized its participation in various labor organizations and highlighted its complex global supply network, though the report questions the effectiveness of these multi-stakeholder initiatives. The findings were based on comprehensive research using shipping records, REI's public disclosures, impact reports, foreign news coverage, social media testimonies, and documentation from human rights organizations. This investigation raises critical questions about supply chain oversight and corporate responsibility in the outdoor retail sector. Moving on to our next news, the Consumer Product Safety Commission has taken a significant step forward in modernizing import safety protocols with their latest unanimous vote. The new rule mandates electronic filing of certificates of compliance for CPSC-regulated imported consumer products, marking a major shift in how product safety is monitored at U.S. ports of entry. This streamlined approach, which will be implemented through ACE, promises to enhance inspection efficiency and improve targeting of high-risk imports. While the initiative represents progress, customs brokers have expressed concerns about trade readiness, citing limited testing opportunities for the new requirements. The implementation timeline has been set at 18 months from Federal Register publication for most imports, with a 24-month window specifically for products entering through foreign trade zones. The comprehensive program will affect all regulated consumer products, including those under de minimis provisions, requiring importers to electronically submit critical data elements such as product identification, certification details, manufacturing information, and testing records. Industry participants should note that the e-filing program isn't creating new testing requirements, but rather digitizing existing certification obligations. The Commission is currently seeking up to 2,000 additional importers to participate before the mandate takes effect, offering an opportunity for early adoption and system familiarization. However, there are concerns about long-term sustainability. Commissioner Mary T. Boyle has highlighted potential challenges, particularly regarding funding continuity once current American Rescue Plan Act support expires. The program's effectiveness may be limited by both budgetary constraints and its scope, as it only covers a portion of imported consumer products. For trade practitioners, this development signals a critical need to prepare systems and procedures for electronic filing compliance while remaining mindful of the program's evolving nature and potential resource limitations. The initiative represents both an opportunity for improved efficiency and a challenge for implementation readiness. Now, we focus in significant news for international investors. The Treasury Department has released detailed FAQs clarifying its new outbound investment rules. A key point of emphasis is that existing authorizations under other regulatory frameworks don't automatically ensure compliance with these new requirements. Even transactions approved through Treasury sanctions licenses or Commerce Department export permits must separately satisfy the outbound investment regulations. The guidance specifically addresses scenarios involving investment targets that transition into covered activities after initial investment. While investors won't face ongoing monitoring obligations, they must submit notifications to Treasury within 30 days if they gain actual knowledge that would have triggered restrictions at the time of investment. For compliance professionals, it's worth noting that questions remain about Treasury's response timelines to these notifications. While the agency has indicated they'll provide prompt follow-up, specific timeframes haven't been established. There's also uncertainty surrounding the possibility of batch notifications for multiple foreign companies, though Treasury is considering this option based on implementation needs. Looking ahead, these rules could see significant expansion under a potential Trump administration. Current restrictions focus on Chinese, Hong Kong, and Macau investments in semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and quantum technologies. However, experts anticipate possible broadening to include additional countries of concern, expanded technology categories, and potentially even passive investment flows like publicly traded securities. As one legal expert noted, while the Biden administration has maintained a small yard, high fence approach, the geopolitical landscape and potential administration changes could lead to a significantly expanded scope. Trade practitioners should prepare for evolving requirements and potential updates to covered activities in the coming years. For our concluding piece, the latest review of the African Growth and Opportunity Act participation list confirms no changes for 2025, with Ethiopia remaining excluded from the trade benefits program. Ethiopia, which was previously the fifth largest AGOA participant with nearly $129 million in program-covered exports to the U.S., has been unable to regain entry since its 2022 termination due to ongoing concerns about oppression in the Tigray region. Despite advocacy efforts during public hearings and written submissions to restore both Ethiopia and Uganda's eligibility, with Uganda having been removed in 2023 following the implementation of anti-gay legislation, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative has maintained current participation restrictions. A critical deadline now looms over the entire program, as AGOA is set to expire on September 30th without congressional action for renewal. This impending expiration adds another layer of uncertainty for participating nations and their trade relationships with the United States. That wraps up our coverage of this week's most impactful trade developments. For international trade professionals looking to stay ahead of the curve, our detailed analysis provides the essential insights you need to navigate these complex changes. Thanks for tuning in to International Trade Minute. We hope you found today's episode insightful and useful for your practice. Remember, our podcast is brought to you by REI Law Firm, your trusted partner in navigating international trade law. Don't miss our next episode. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Stay connected and continue the conversation with us on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay informed and stay ahead.